The transfer portal is in its last day, but as they say, one door closes and another door opens. You're on the Hoops Gap. Welcome into the Hoops Gap Pod, sponsored and powered by Big East Energy. I have the pleasure of having T. Baker on midweek, a rare midweek appearance for T. Really happy to have him on because it's the end of transfer portal season. It really kind of isn't. It's just people can't transfer anymore. Really my first question to you, T, is, and thanks for being here, is like, how much longer do you think this portal season goes? Is it a month? Does you think it goes into June? Just curious from your point.
Yeah, it's something I've been thinking about a lot, especially as a journalist. It's like, when does it end? When can we sort of begin to think about, like, okay, how do we think about next year's rosters? I think what some of the things I've heard are just like, a lot of players are needing to make the case early because scholarships fill up and summer sessions begin and enrollment in school, things like that. These are still student athletes. There's an enrollment period in universities that needs to happen. So I think that we'll hear a lot of the big names landing soon, I would say within the next week or two. And then, there's so many athletes in the portal and not all of them find homes. I think that's one thing people don't always talk about, is not everyone who enters the transfer portal is going to find a suitable Division I next step. So I think really for now, with players and their agents and their families, whatever, it's really about trying to lock in a spot on a roster while there's a scholarship available.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. I know that in the past they've kind of trimmed it. Like it used to be, I think it was 60 days. The year before it was 45. Now it's 30. So the NCAA is middling along with trying to figure this whole thing out on both sides of the aisle, on the women's and men's side. But it really does handcuff teams. You know what I mean? Like for example, you have a team like South Carolina who is doing a ton in the portal because I feel like they feel like, they lost to MiLaysia Fulwiley. Not a total surprise there, but they really are kind of reloading. And then you have a UConn team, everyone's asking me, I think in our last show last Friday that you were on, someone said, "Oh man, no update on Serah Willams," and I responded, "Do you want me to just make one up? Like, I don't have an update. Like, there is no update. She's cut it to 3 teams. UConn's one of them. What are your thoughts? Like, what do you think she's if you got into her head, what is she deciding right now in Serah Willams' mind? Is she thinking about the bottom line, her finances, or is she thinking about, hey, I can go win a title here, or both?"
I think it's probably both for me. It seems like, based on what I've read, it's sort of like a 2-horse race, LSU and UConn. That's kind of her top 2 out of the 3 remaining. Kim Mulkey is a type of coach who has created a program that people want to play at. I think one of the criticisms that she has gotten in the past is that she's not developing talent for the next level. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think it's a little bit of a harsh critique. We had players like Angel Reese, Brittany Griner play for Kim Mulkey, and they have had tremendous WNBA careers. They have talent, right? But also, I don't think that it's necessarily a player development issue. I think Kim Mulkey's an excellent coach. She also has a tremendous support staff. Folks like Simone Augustus are on her staff, a legend of the game. So I think for Serah, I don't know Serah, have never spoken to her, don't know what's going on in her mind, but I think it's probably a combination of money and where she can develop the most for the next level. She's a player who has her eyes on the next level. And so it's a question of, what system can I fit in best to? And I think Kim Mulkey has always had the type of team that revolves around a big like Serah. So I think that's one sort of pro in that category for them. UConn has less of that in their history. I think more of like developing guards or wings or, players who have diverse, versatile skill sets more than like a back to the basket big. But we're in a different era of basketball. It's a little bit positionless. So I think it's a question of, talking with the coaches, I've heard that there's some like, analytics discussions of here's exactly how you can fit in UConn's system. And Serah's probably weighing all those things.
Yeah. The other thing I was going to say is, I mean, this is just silly, but she could also form like a dynamic Serah duo. Like, I mean, let's be honest. Yeah. The branding rights, I'm so old and I'm going to date myself on this even further. But like when I was a kid, there were these, I think my grandfather had these things from the old Yankee days, and it was the M&M boys, Mickey Mantle and Roger Maris. Right. So if you can get the Serah sisters, that would be awesome. Like where UConn has that marketing ploy, but also it's playing with Serah Strong. So forget about the marketing aspect. Like I think Serah Strong is going to skyrocket to superstardom next year. Yeah. Not to mention Azzi Fudd, who's a top 5 WNBA talent right now. I don't think that's talked about enough, even on this show. Like we talk about it, but I don't know other words to describe how good I think Serah will be. Our Serah. So if Serah Willams, if you're listening, come play with probably the best player in college basketball next year. I mean, that would be, if I was Geno, I'd be like, forget about me. I'm old. Do you want to come play with Serah Strong?
Yeah.
Like, come on.
And a chance to reload and win a national title again. I think that's the piece that certainly that's a possibility at LSU. They have some great talent as well. Flau'jae Johnson. They just brought in Kate Koval from Notre Dame. So, LSU is one of those programs that reloads to perennial Elite 8, Final 4 cusp team, like no doubt. So, but that point you make about Serah Strong, I think the world is still sleeping on Serah Strong a little bit because she hasn't been given that like superstar edit yet. Part of it's her personality. She doesn't like that sort of spotlight, isn't someone who kind of leans into the social media aspect of it, like is just a shy kid really to talk to. But one thing that's interesting about her is I've been watching some clips and footage of her mother, Allison Feaster, who folks might not know is a former player, college basketball player, WNBA player. And she actually had played a couple games pregnant with Serah. So Serah already has some WNBA minutes. And I think that's
amazing.
Another element that she's got some experience already.
That's such a great point, and I'm gonna move to the next. There's nothing I could say would top that. So we're gonna move to the next topic and take a quick break, and we're gonna come back with T Baker coming up after this.
Big East Energy, Ryan Gresh here with the Feel Good Lab, and the same tools that we use to help elite athletes like Hassan Diarra, Nika Mule, and our very own Cam Spencer are the same things that we use to help people like you and I. People that want to optimize their overall health, feel a little bit younger, or are suffering from a chronic condition. And it's all about reducing inflammation, improving the nutrients in our body, and fixing our gut. And the way that we do that is not through a one-size-fits-all model. Everything is personalized. We offer products that are plant-based, natural, and help you identify the root cause. And oftentimes, we're looking at what's going into our body. So we have a food inflammation test, a gut microbiome test, so that we can treat you like an individual human that you are. And so the thing that we're the most excited about is actually connecting with you. Whether you're a UConn fan or not, please reach out, call us. We'd love to talk with you and see how we can help. Best in health.
How dare I? Yeah, that's Ryan Gresh. He's our one of our new sponsors for the Hoopscat Pod. Great guy, supports the women's and the men's team. As he mentions, Nika Mule is one of his I wouldn't say colleagues, but he's worked with her. Cam Spencer, who's in the NBA right now. I've used it. It's a great product. Go check it out. Feel Good Lab. Get 15% off your order if you use the promo code Big East Energy. Okay, T. I think it's really important that we talk about this Unrivaled success because they've done something that's kind of unheard of in terms of women's sports in the U.S. in terms of like the profitability of the league. They turned minus, forget about some people that don't understand business. When a startup happens, most don't make money for years. They kind of keep the books steady. I believe the revenue was $27 million in the green for Unrivaled. That's what reports are saying. what does this say about the success of this league and also the two that are at the helm, two former UConn greats?
Well, I think it's just a really important moment for women's basketball, women's professional basketball, because for years, women have had no choice but to go overseas to play and, get paid by EuroLeague teams. And I think that there's a really competitive, amazing market. I like to watch EuroLeague basketball, but it's also disruptive to people's lives. And these are people who have families, who don't want to miss holidays, who really want to play in their home country and in front of their home fans, and they should have that opportunity. So I think it's really just a paradigm shift for how women can play professional sports in the United States and to get paid an actual non-laughable wage to do it. I think that as a WNBA fan for 20 plus years, I've been disappointed with the league on many occasions for a lot of the decisions it makes, but in particular right now, it's not okay to pay people $80,000 a year as rookies to play professional basketball, like full stop. And I think that's creating a really fascinating dynamic right now, because now the owners of this league, Breanna, Stewart, Napheesa, Collier, are going to the bargaining table with their employer, the WNBA, to talk about their salaries. And so it's a fascinating dynamic. It's putting Kathy Engelbert, WNBA commissioner, in a spot where she's going to have to make choices that impact how players are going to interact with the league moving forward. And it's going to create a really fascinating sort of power dynamic shift. I think that we're seeing on the NBA side, it's the players are calling the shots more and more. We've shifted. I think owners still, make a lot of money and are continuing to hold the power. But now you got players like LeBron James who are going to potentially be an owner in the NBA. We're in a new era of player empowerment and player ownership, and players don't just want to be players anymore. They want to be entrepreneurs. They want to be business people.
Right.
So we'll see the way that Napheesa and Breanna Stewart sort of stepped into that role and did so successfully, and already have success after 1 year, I think is a really incredible step for women's sports.
What do you think the WNBA's response to this success of this kind of 3-on-3 modified full court league is going to be? Do you think it's going to be innovative? Do you think it's going to be the same old stuff? Do you expect there to be some type of fallout or even like a lockout, which is the worst thing a league can have? Even a league like the WNBA, which is starting to gain more traction in the States, I don't want that to happen, because it almost killed baseball, which was an established sport for a century. Mm-hmm. And you just don't want it to kill a league that's been around for 2 decades, coming up on a 3rd decade. But, I think that would be a death sentence, to be honest with you.
I mean, I think the WNBA has to choose who it wants to be in the sports landscape. If you want to be taken seriously, if you want to have a league that people pay attention to, that has long-term sustainability, you have to invest. And I think, forever the WNBA kind of had this whole mindset of, well, we're not making enough money. People don't want to come to the games. People aren't sitting in the seats. They can't say that anymore. And now they have to reckon with the fact that they need to pay their players more. They need to pay their players a higher percentage of revenue. And they need to ensure that there are leaders and owners and WNBA franchises who have the capital to invest properly in the sport. And if that means that some owners can't be at the table anymore, I think that's what that has to mean. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think if some franchises can't pay up and do what they need to do, build that practice facility, then they're going to fold. And I think that's okay, because it creates space for other teams that can make that investment and can respect these women for their professional talents to step in and fill that gap.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there's now 14 teams in the W.
We're up to 13 now. It's going to be 2 more next year.
I was reading here that there's 13, but a 14 team the Valkyrie begin this year in 2025. Is that not right?
It's 12. The Valkyries are the 13th, and then we're going to have go in Portland. So it's going to be an odd number, which I think is kind of weird, but that's where we're at.
Yeah, no, I think honestly though, like to me, less is more. It means that there's, better teams for each team. Like when you start to have like these larger leagues, it waters down the product sometimes. So I'm totally fine with them taking baby steps with that. But I think to your point in terms of the investment. One thing I will say though, it doesn't always that doesn't always happen the way people want it to, because for years, whether it's been in other sports, owners of franchises that have been around for years pocket money and then they don't really reinvest on the teams.
Yeah.
So until there's kind of like real transparency with that, I don't necessarily know if that'll always be the case. It seems like, and correct me if I'm wrong, that there's enough good actors in the W that want to keep investing and keep the momentum going. But is that true, or is that, you think that's kind of false? I feel like you're disagreeing with me there.
I mean, it's a corporation, and they want to make the most money off of their product that they can. And players are just part of that equation. That's frankly how it
Sure.
goes. I think that these owners want to make the maximum profits that they can, and Kathy works for the owners. And we have consistently seen the WNBA not invest in the right way in its players. So there's a turning point moment here. I think in the 2020 CBA, we saw a lot of growth. I think this is going to have to be a transformational change, or players are going to decide to take their talents elsewhere and not compete in the WNBA, and the product is going to deteriorate over time. I think that what the WNBA has going for it is what I think the Unrivaled needs to figure out is, I mean, the reason I watch sports and what I get invested in is like the history of franchises and rivalries and legacies. With Unrivaled, it's tough to figure out exactly how these programs are, these teams are going to be established as like rivals and like
Sure.
franchises that you want to root for. Like, I think that's the one piece that the WNBA has, is like, you want to root for your team in your region, or you want to support the players that come to your market. Like, that's one thing that Unrivaled, it feels at this point still, it's like an exhibition, right? Which is great. But I don't feel like I can get as personally invested in that, because I want to see, okay, how is this franchise growing, or who's coming to my local team, or can the Minnesota Lynx be another, get back on top and win more titles. Like there's these legacies and histories of programs that I'm really invested in as a fan and as a journalist that that Unrivaled doesn't have. So I think that's one thing the WNBA does have going for it. But they got to pay up. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. It's frustrating. The fact that they were flying on friggin' Southwest Airlines until last year and not private planes is offensive. It's frankly offensive. And so I think it's going to be a really tough negotiation. If it comes to a lockout, it comes to a lockout. I'm here for it. Like, hold these people accountable and get your money, because you're the one who's putting your body on the line and needs to be a professional athlete. And male players would never, ever, ever accept this. So I think we have to reckon with that women's sports are getting a new momentum, and they need a bigger part of the pie.
I don't disagree with anything you said. I would not necessarily push back on anything you said, but I would have to say, like, everything you said from a perspective of the businesses wanting to maximize profit is true. So going off of that, supposition, like where you're essentially saying that it has to be a profitable entity. Unrivaled has proven that in a year.
Yeah.
So they have all of the leverage going forward in terms of who dictate who they can potentially get sponsored by, if they go to streaming, if they do a kind of a media rights deal. The WNBA doesn't. Like, it does when they have the same players. And to your point, maybe it's the years of not investing enough to kind of make it a true professional league, and not just kind of like, oh, that's nice. Like, that's kind of what you're telling me, is like, for years they've essentially been like, oh, that's kind of like off to the side, and now you want to be out in the forefront. We've shown essentially with Unrivaled, and just with college athletics, which is no longer amateur, it's professional because people are getting paid, that there's people that want to watch these athletes in the States. So to me, it's more about what can the lessons of Unrivaled WNBA learn from lessons of Unrivaled? Is it to modify the game? Is it to go back to the roots of it? Is it to combine leagues and basically buy them out? I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I just know that for years, for whatever the reasons are, the WNBA has not been profitable, and that's part of the reason why. That sucks, because for people like you and me who want to watch women's sports and want to watch basketball and want to root for a Minnesota Lynx or New York Liberty or whoever, that to me is the toughest part. Is it's hard to kind of reconcile those points together.
Yeah, it's tough, and it's not a simple fix. I think that what WNBA players have always asked for is not the same amount of money as men, because they're not bringing in the same amount of money as NBA. They want the same percentage of revenue that NBA.
That's fair.
Get. And that should not be a big ask, because these players are the athletes. They're the reason we buy tickets. They're the faces on the, stadiums, and they're why these organizations make money. I think that what frustrates me about the WNBA, and what has continually frustrated me about the WNBA, is just they get a little stuck. They get in their own way. Sometimes they're their own worst enemy. For years they wanted to market players a certain way. They wanted to emphasize femininity and, frankly, straightness. And I think now
Sure.
They're allowing women to be themselves in the many ways that they come to the league. They're embracing their LGBT fan base. And I think that matters, because a large percentage of the fan base is LGBT, and so are the players. And so to finally have a player-driven league, you have to let players be themselves and make money in their own rights and be the draws that they are, instead of forcing them into what you think they should be. And I think that's always the case with women's sports. We always want to put it in a box. And it frankly is out of the box now. Players go to Unrivaled and they express themselves. There's different social media elements to this that are allowing players to be themselves and to show fans who they are. And that's what people pay for. So if the WNBA wants to keep going up on this upward trajectory, they need to realize that it's the players who ultimately are bringing in the money and who are going to continue that growth. So they need to invest in them to return that investment and keep those owners happy.
Couldn't say it any better than better myself. T, great job. We're going to move to the next topic, which is UConn's roster outlook next season. And are they ready to run it back? We're going to talk about that coming after the break. All right, we're back on the Hoops Cap. T Baker and I talking through the portal closing, where Serah Willams is going. Spoiler alert, we don't know. Unrivaled success, potentially new era for the WNBA, and now talking about UConn's roster outlook. Last Friday we talked about will Geno kind of go in the portal to find a backup point guard or someone Caitlin Chen-esque to pair with KK and Kellis Fisher, the freshman coming in from Florida. I'm curious in terms of who, just saying that the roster stays exactly the same. I think they're going to add obviously some pieces, but if it stays exactly the same, how good is this team next year? We talked about how great Sarah Strong is. And I want you to answer this question for people that have jumped into my mentions a few times. Do you see Azzi Fudd playing a little point guard at all this year? Because I don't, but I'm just curious your point, your perspective.
Well, to your first question, I think UConn's a Final Four team. That's their ceiling, right? I mean, championship. Once you're at the Final Four, it's sometimes luck, right? So we'll see who else is there. I can't, but their title chances are high because of who they have on the team. Primarily Sarah Strong. She is a talent that is just going to continue to improve, and is just someone who, coaches like Don Staley have said could be the best player that ever played at UConn, which is a really remarkable statement from someone who I respect a lot and whose opinion I think is really worth taking seriously. So I think that their ceiling is high. What I think about the Azzi piece is I've never known her to be a point guard or be on ball like that. So that would be surprising to me, and could happen if there's maybe injuries, but would not be the way that they could maximize her talent, in my opinion. I think she's an off the ball wing/shooting guard, and that's where she thrives. But what what that suggests is maybe people have lack of confidence in their point guards, which I'm intrigued by, because I think that they have talent at that position and they have other guards who could play on the ball and are probably looking for another piece in the portal to do just that. So I do not think it would be Geno and the coaching staff's plan to have Azzi as the point guard.
Yeah, when you have a shooter like Azzi and really a playmaker, when the ball is in her hands in the open floor, she 100% can do whatever she wants with it. But I don't necessarily know if that translates to, hey, now we're going to, have you run the offense, because I feel like that would take away from their upside, which is her points per possession. Analytically, she's probably one of the most, you take away Paige Bueckers, she's probably the most efficient player in the country, if not top 5. And even if she wasn't, I don't think Geno cares about that. I think he wants her to be a volume scorer, right? I think he wants her to shoot a ton, and kind of putting her on the ball would take that away. I think people, mix that up. Like she's not a quarterback. Like just because she has the ball in her hands doesn't mean she's going to do, you know what I mean? Like it's a different sport. Like if they run their offense, she's going to get a ton of shots. So great point there. As far as the roster minus Paige, the impact of Paige Bueckers, it's great that UConn has Sarah Strong and Azzi and, potentially some, an international superstar and Blanca Quinones coming in. But do you see them struggle? I think they're going to struggle a little bit without Paige. Like, I just think that's just a natural thing. Like it's to lose that iconic of a player and what she truly means to this kind of, I'm calling them franchises, to this franchise essentially, is going to be really difficult to replace, even in the aggregate. What do you think?
Yeah, and we can call them a franchise because this is pro
sport. They get paid. They get paid. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt. I don't think you ever pick up a season just exactly where you left off. There's always new pieces. There's always different dynamics. And when you lose a generational talent like Paige Bueckers, that changes your team. So I think that one of the themes that we saw this year was that Geno said his best teams have always been like sort of a 3-headed monster, right? Whether it was Stewie, Morgan Tuck, Mariah Jefferson, Renee Montgomery, Tina Charles, Maya Moore. Like there's always those 3 scoring options. So I think UConn is going to have to figure out who that scoring option is. Like part of what made Serah Strong and Azzi Fudd be able to dominate is that so much attention was on Paige Bueckers. So how do you recreate your offense where there's those multiple threats? And certainly, yeah, you don't just lose a player like Paige Bueckers and pick up where you left off.
And also, like, just the attention, like as you mentioned, like just the attention she gets. Like even if you quote unquote shut down Paige for a game, the amount of open looks that everyone else gets is just like, okay, like, pick your poison. Like I think that's what this run kind of showed in killing everybody in the tournament. The
efficiency, so, like Paige is a 50, 40, 90 shooter. That's crazy, right? That's not something that we see. So to lose that level of efficiency changes their offensive efficiency, changes their overall statistical profile.
To add to that, she's not only 50, 40, 90, which is becoming more common in the game of basketball as a whole, as people become more analytical and efficiency driven, but she's not only that efficient, she also is the first player, male or female, to do that and lead the country in assist to turnover ratio. So she's not like just, because I think Geno's made fun of her, like that she gets pissed off when she misses a free throw because of her efficiency ratings. And he's just like, I could use less of that. But he's not going to hate the fact that, or he's going to hate the fact that he's losing her 3.8 to 1 assist to turnover ratio, which is insane. Yeah. She's that efficient and she doesn't turn the ball over. So that's what you're missing. So who in this team, from the guards in particular, kind of steps up and kind of puts everything together in the aggregate? You're not going to replace her, but like maybe it's 2 or 3 players that you think can kind of come together to match her production.
I think one player that comes to mind is Ashlyn Shade, because she is a tremendously efficient shooter as well. She is just someone who has shown real flashes of skill and talent. And if she's that third scoring option on a consistent basis, that could really change the dynamic of the team. And she in particular is one player that Geno is constantly ragging on because he sees her potential. And I think that's usually an indication of where he wants her to be. He needs her to be at a different level with Paige gone. So she's one of those players that comes to mind. I think that there's also an opportunity for other bench players to step in. I think, Geno and the coaching staff have always valued sort of like tall wing guard. So I think a player like Morgan Shelley could really step into a role that fills some of that scoring gap. So I think there's a lot of pieces, and I think that's what made UConn so great this year was their depth. But this year we're really going to have to see, this is going to be a different team. They don't have the same level of talent next year, like full stop. Like that's just true. They're going to have a tremendous amount of talent, but with Paige gone, that's a massive generational amount of talent that's left. So they're going to have to figure out who that other third option is or do it by committee.
For sure. All right. We're going to call it a day. Appreciate T Baker for being here. This is another episode of the Hoops Cap powered by Big East Energy. Go check out the Feel Good Lab. And T, where can people find your stuff outside of here? I know that you're at the Next, and just give people a listen to where they can find your writing.
Yeah, so you can find me at the Next. I write cover Big East women's hoops, or you can find me on social media at tbaker_WBB, where I just post my thoughts, musings, hot takes. So give me a follow, and happy to be here again with you, Mark.
All right, there it is. You guys enjoy the rest of your day. Go Huskies.